Good morning, everyone. Before starting my session, I'd like to thank our respected principal, Professor Alok Shravan Dotto sir, and our HOD of Pathology Department, Dr. Mamata Guho Sinha Mollik ma'am, and our respected Dean sir, Dr. Anindo Kumar Roy sir, for giving me the opportunity to speak here on this very important day. So starting with the hematological types and lab diagnosis of thalassemia. Okay, so thalassemias are inherited quantitative defects of globin chain synthesis. These are autosomal recessive diseases and they lead to an imbalance in the alpha and beta globin chain production and thus leading to ineffective erythropoiesis and hemolysis. Now, mainly we have two types, alpha thalassemia and beta thalassemia. So in alpha thalassemia, due to deletion of one or more alpha globin genes that is present on the chromosome 16, and in beta thalassemia it occurs due to point mutations affecting the transcription, translocation and the processing of different beta globin genes located on the chromosome 11. Now, coming to the globin chains. So, what are the globin chain? Now, hemoglobin is a quaternary structure of a tetrameric protein. It has a total of 4 globin chains which are polypeptide chains. 2 among them are alpha chains and 2 among them are beta chains. Now, each of these alpha and beta polypeptide chains, they house a heme complex. Now, what is heme? Heme is an iron protoporphyrin and it is the molecule that is carrying oxygen in our blood. So, since there is 4 heme molecules in the hemoglobin, so a normal adult hemoglobin is capable of carrying 4 oxygen molecules at a time. So, whenever there is globin chains, that is alpha chains and beta chains, we will see different form. This is the primary structure which is formed by different amino acids. This primary structure is again forming the alpha helix or the secondary structure, which is again forming the tertiary structure which is formed by the polypeptide chains, and on assembly this is forming the final quaternary structure of the tetrameric hemoglobin. So, coming to the classification of thalassemia. Now, broadly we divide them in alpha and beta thalassemia. Now, depending on clinical presentation and depending on genotype, they are further classified. So, whenever among the 4 alpha genes, whenever one gene is affected, it is the carrier form of alpha thalassemia. Whenever 2 genes are affected, it is trait. If 3 genes are affected, we see the HBH disease, and when 4 genes are affected, we see the hemoglobin Bart's disease. And in case of beta thalassemia, whenever 1 gene is affected, we see beta thalassemia trait, and whenever 2 genes are affected, we see the beta thalassemia major. Now, depending on the severity and the clinical presentation, these thalassemia, both of these can present as minor, intermediate and major, and depending on the requirement of transfusion, frequent blood transfusion in patients, they can be categorized as transfusion dependent and non-transfusion dependent thalassemia. Now, this is a further detailed classification where here on the right side, on the left side, we can see the genotype of these thalassemias, but our concern will be more on the phenotypic expression of this thalassemia. So, whenever it is a silent carrier of alpha thalassemia or the alpha thalassemia minima, so clinically the patient may be normal with a mild decrease in the mean corpuscular hemoglobin or the mean corpuscular volume. Now, whenever it is alpha thalassemia trait or minor, the clinical picture can be of normal or borderline anemia, but in the peripheral smear study, we will find that RBCs are microcytic and hypertrophic. And in case of HBH disease, which is alpha thalassemia intermedia, clinical severity in this case can be variable and can present with mild to moderate anemia, can also present with more severe form of anemia, but in these cases, in the peripheral smear, the RBCs will be markedly hypochromic and microcytic. Now finally coming to the hemoglobin bursts that can present with Hydrops vitalis syndrome. Now clinically this is very rare, as often the baby having HBH births, hemoglobin births, they often die in utero or present shortly after birth they die. Mainstay of our lab diagnosis is complete blood count and peripheral smear. After that, we can perform hemoglobin electrophoresis as a screening test, and then we can perform automated high performance liquid chromatography or HPLC as a confirmatory test. Now, in complete blood count, here we see all the RBC indices, including the hemoglobin, the mean corpuscular volume, the mean corpuscular hemoglobin, all these things, and they are very valuable information. And once we prepare slide from the blood of the patient in the peripheral smear, we can see characteristic findings like target cells and nucleated RBCs, which can significantly raise the suspicion of thalassemia. Now our next modality is hemoglobin electrophoresis. Now there are various types of hemoglobin electrophoresis. There is one type is cellulose assisted electrophoresis at alkaline pH. Now this is a key method for detecting common hemoglobin variants, and it also works well as the initial screening before the confirmatory techniques. Now there is another method known as agarose gel electrophoresis at alkaline pH. Now this is an alternative to the previous technique and is somewhat more sensitive for detection of different variant hemoglobins that is present in small amounts. It is more expensive and also less convenient, thus it is not commonly used. Okay, so coming to the next technique, that is cited agarose gel electrophoresis in an acidic pH. So the first two techniques we discussed were on alkaline pH. This is on acidic pH. So this acid electrophoresis is highly useful for differentiating variants that co-migrate on cellular acetate. Certain high affinity hemoglobins have different levels of mobility on acid gels, making this method more specific for their detection. Now coming to our final test, that is the high performance liquid chromatography test. Now this is an automated test using the cation exchange principle, and increasingly this is being used as the initial method of diagnosis, not as a confirmatory test but as an initial method of diagnosis in laboratories with high patient load. So in comparison with hemoglobin electrophoresis, there are mainly 4 advantages. Firstly, this method is automated. So thus it requires less staff and it also requires less time, and here we can run a large amount of sample in large batches. And then the next advantage is we can analyze the HPLC in very small amount of sample, as little as 2 microliter. So this helps in diagnosing diseases in pediatric patients. The third advantage is it helps in quantification of the normal hemoglobins and also certain variants, and this can be done on almost all samples. And the final advantage is it helps in a provisional identification of larger proportion of variant hemoglobins in this particular technique. Okay, so this is the HPLC analyzer machine that we are using here in Shantiniketan Medical College, in our laboratory in Shantiniketan Medical College. This is the machine where the samples are being run, and in the desktop we can analyze the results and we can tabulate them according to the patient serial number. So these are the graphical representation of of the findings of 2 cases. One is of beta thalassemia trait and one is of beta thalassemia major. So in case of beta thalassemia trait, the A2 concentration is higher than 3.5%. In this case it is 5.6%, and in case of beta thalassemia major, the F concentration is very high. It is more than 80%. So in this case it is 99.2%, and the A2 concentration in this case is 2.1%. I'm not going into details because many senior speakers are there after me and they will deliver their session. So finally, I will just like to mention one thing that from the laboratory perspective, all these informations are they should be provided when hemoglobinopathy diagnosis is requested. So among them, the name of the patient, date of birth, hospital number, reason for testing, and the clinical features which raise the suspicion of any hemoglobinopathy, pregnancy status of the patient, recent blood transfusion history, family history, and in case of partner screening, identifying details of the propositor. So all this history are very important, and we will also kindly request on the clinical side that whenever a requisition for hemoglobinopathy testing is being sent, all these details are mentioned. And finally, I will like to summarize the full form of laboratory testing, the flowchart. Here we can see that first we have to take full medical history and family history, and then do the complete blood count and also do peripheral smear study along with reticulocyte counting using a supravital stain. So after this study, if there is low mean corpuscular volume or low mean corpuscular hemoglobin, that is less than 80 femtoliter of MCV and less than 27 picogram of hemoglobin. If both are low, we have to see at the slide if there is presence of microcytosis, hypochromia, target cells, and in certain cases like HBH disease inclusion bodies, we will look at the serum ferritin level. If it is more than 12 nanogram per ml, then we have to go for electrophoresis, hemoglobin electrophoresis, and HPLC. Now, on the other hand, if these values are normal, they are not low, then we have to look for other causes of anemia. And if these findings, that is the microcytosis, hypochromia, and target cells, they are there on the peripheral smear, we have to see whether if they are not present in the peripheral smear, we have to see whether the serum ferritin level is less than 12 nanogram per ml or not. If it is so, then we should consider iron deficiency anemia. Now, if iron deficiency anemia is suspected, the patient is supplemented with adequate iron supplementation for 3 months, and after that, the test is repeated. Okay, so if there is no improvement, then again we have to go for hemoglobin electrophoresis and HPLC. Now, after this test, if the hemoglobin A2 level is more than equal to 4% and hemoglobin F is 0 to 1.5%, we have to suspect beta thalassemia trait. If hemoglobin A2 is less than 4% and F is less than 1%, we have to suspect alpha thalassemia traits and related disorders. If A2 is more than equal to 4% and HbF is 5 to 50%, we have to suspect beta thalassemia intermediate. And if HbH is less than 5 to 25% and HbA2 is less than 4%, we have to suspect hemoglobin H disease. And along with this, using HPLC, we can detect some other variant hemoglobins and other types of thalassemia like the HbA disorder, like the HbH disorders and the HbC disorders. There can be some compound heterozygous variant as well, like HbE beta, like HbS beta thalassemia. So all of those can be detected using techniques like high performance liquid chromatography. And after that, once we can confirm these suspicions, we will go for DNA analysis of alpha and beta globin gene mutations. With this, I will like to end my session. Thank you.